Hey everyone. So I'm going to do kind of a second part of a mini series, I guess we could call it, of pythons and boas or just different reptiles or snakes that you may have never heard of. And this one, I'm going to do 5 boas, unlike the last one that we did, which was 5 pythons that you may not have heard of. So with me today is Lily. She's a Dumerals boa, which I imagine most people have heard of. But we're going to start this off with kind of her cousin, which you may not have ever heard of. What are you doing, you weirdo? So the first one is the Malagasy or Madagascar Ground Boa. And while yes, she is a ground boa and she is from Madagascar, there are actually 2 different species in the same genus, which I'm not going to try to murder the pronunciation of, so I'll just put it up right here. So in Madagascar, there are 2 species of completely ground boa of this genus. One is the Malagasy or Madagascar Ground Boa, the other is the Dumerals boa. So the island of Madagascar is a really cool, crazy place that has a bunch of different ecosystems all across a very small actual amount of geographical range and area. So for the most part, the Dumerals boas, which are actually the smaller of them, inhabit more of the southern, southwestern, a little bit drier, a little bit more arid. Obviously, they're still a subtropical species, so it's still fairly humid, and they're not going to be out basking in a desert rock like you'd imagine, like a bearded dragon or something like that. Even then, but we're not going to go down that route. And then the other one, the Malagasy ground boa, are in kind of the more northern parts of the island where it's a little bit more tropical, a little bit cooler, much more humid. So, with that being said, the Malagasy ground boas, they're pretty distinctive. Like when you first when you just kind of first glance at them, they don't look that different. But when you actually take a second to look at the differences, there is quite a bit of difference between them. Number one being just their size. So the Dumerals boas, they normally around 6 to 7.5 ish feet. Like a big female can maybe hit about 8 feet. She's probably about 6 ish right now. She's slow grown, and we didn't get her until she was an adult anyway. So we're not entirely sure. Number one, how even old she is, and number two, how she was fed during her formative years. And then the Malagasy ground boas, which are the actual focus, it's just she's on me, so it's hard not to talk about her directly, are much larger. They normally attain lengths of 8 to 10 feet, so a much longer, bigger snake. They're actually the biggest snake on the island, period. Another one is their coloration and patterns is a little bit different. Theirs is not quite as mottled as this one. They're a little bit more, they're still very good at camouflage, hiding in the leaf litter and waiting for kind of ambush, wait, and strike as prey comes along things like a lot of boa species are. But it's a little bit more solid color, and their color is a little bit richer. It's a little bit warmer, more pinks and orange kind of hues, as to more of these guys are just the kind of the solid brown. But still, they have this really cool pattern built in there. Another thing is that their heads are a little bit more pointed. Dumerals boas, as you can see here, they kind of have a pretty blunted snout. The Malagasy ground boas in general, they have a little bit more pointed, still not as triangular as the boa imperators and boa constrictors that we're used to seeing on a regular basis, but they still look really cool. So the next one on this is actually part of the same family, but entirely different genus, and that is the Sanzenia family. And these are, because I'm going to stick with the theme, the Madagascar ground or tree boas, or the Malagasy tree boas. So Malagasy, that's just how we kind of shorten or colloquially refer to Madagascar endemic species. So these guys are really cool. They're not, so asterisk on this one. So they're called tree boas because a lot of the times during the day they're found in trees and shrubs found near a river. And again, similarly to the Malagasy ground boas and the Dumerals boas, there are 2 kind of separate subspecies. I don't know if they have full species classification for yet. Taxonomy is kind of a giant pain in the butt, right? So there are basically 2 species that, again, are also kind of broken up geographically. There is the Madagascarensis, which are kind of the more greenish hued ones. They're usually a little bit smaller. They're found in the northern, more humid parts, where the same as the Malagasy ground boa are found. And then the other one is the Voltanensis, or similar to that. And that is found more closer to where the Dumerals boas are found, the southern, southwestern part, where it's a little bit drier, it's a little bit more arid, a little bit warmer. They're a little bit larger, and they have a little bit more of a brownish hue. But their actual pattern doesn't really change a whole lot, which are these really cool kind of triangular black and white I don't really want to say like oculus is kind of like, like an Oscar or like the little like rosette things, but they have a really cool pattern broken up on them. And their actual pattern doesn't change just between the two, I think, subspecies. I'm just going to stick with subspecies for the purposes of this, are a little bit different size and a little different colored as their kind of background pattern, or background color, I should say. So the reason why I kind of made a bit of a word fumble at the beginning about them being tree boas is that actually a lot of their predatory behavior is mostly documented at night. Like most snakes, they're nocturnal or active at dawn and dusk, being crepuscular. So when they're actually actively hunting, looking for food, it's usually at night and it's more on the ground, which is possibly why they're a little bit more heavy bodied than you'd see in a lot of, when you typically think of arboreal snakes. Their actual body shape might be a little bit closer to what we would think of like kind of like a carpet python, where they're semi-arboreal, where they're very comfortable in trees and they'll hang out in trees for long periods of time, spending the days hiding away from predators in the trees, but then actually hunting for food down on the ground, which makes their diets a little bit more varied. So they'll be looking for rodents as well as for birds and other lizards and other things like that, as well as, I assume, probably some small lemurs like mouse lemurs and things. The next one up is another interesting snake, and we're now finally moving away from South America, and that is the Argentine Rainbow Boa. So if any of you snake aficionados out there, you've probably heard of the Brazilian Rainbow Boa, one of the most beautiful snakes on the planet, as well as their cousin, the Colombian Rainbow Boa. There's actually another species, which is from Argentina, the Argentinian one. So kind of the main difference between those and the other two is not, number one, their geographical range and like their DNA and things like that, but they're a little bit more slender bodied and their color is a little bit different. So the Brazilian rainbow boas, that's that really nice, rich red color. The Colombian boas, they have a wide variety of patterns and morphs, although the Brazilians are starting to establish a few as well. But they're usually a little bit more orangey in color, not as deep red as their kind of like base one. The Argentinians, they're actually kind of more of like a tannish gray color, kind of like a paler color, which looks really cool, but they still have that beautiful rainbow luminescence, not luminescence. Wow, I'm totally stumbling over that. Iridescence. There we go. I get there eventually. That beautiful rainbow iridescence when the sun hits them, and their skin reflects that iridescence really well, which is why they get their name rainbow. So the Argentinians, the care for them is pretty much the same as you would for a Brazilian or a Colombian rainbow boa. A 4x2 I think is probably a minimum size for an adult, because they'll still get 4.5 to 6 feet long. They're a little bit slender bodied, so they're a little bit thinner. Not like that they're very heavy bodied to begin with compared to like an imperator or a constrictor, but they still get 4.5 to 6 feet long. Still fairly arboreal, but they're a little bit slender, a little bit more arboreal. So maybe give them some more branches and perches, at least a 4-foot enclosure. Make sure you keep that humidity up, but not like damp and stagnant, because that can lead to bad things like that. As well as, just basic husbandry, things like that. If I'll at some point do a whole species spotlight about rainbow boas in general, but I just want to talk about the Argentinian ones because they're just kind of unheard of. And even when I first came across them, I was like, wait, what now? After that comes an interesting one, which is, it's not one specific snake, it's actually a small group of them, and those are the tracky boas or the eyelash boas. So here, Lily, you're kind of wrapping around my neck a little bit there. The eyelash boas are a group of boas from one specific genus, which, again, I'm not going to try to butcher their name, so I'll put it up right here. These guys are actually more of the true dwarf boas. So when when you think about like all the different localities and stuff of the imperators, like the Tarahuma Mountains and like the Nigerians, they're not Nigerians, jeez. A lot of the Central American localities, they call them dwarf boas. These guys are actually true dwarf boas because they're actually an entirely different species and genus whatsoever. In fact, they're not even really true boa constrictors or boas in general. They're boa type snakes, but they're kind of like adjacent to there. Their actual closest relatives are a type of pipe snake, which is closer to a colubrid snake. When we think about the kind of basic classifications of snakes of boa, python, colubrid, and then the venomous ones, it's actually a little bit more complex than that kind of base generalization and grouping that we do. And I'm going to do a whole other video that talks a little bit more about some boas and pythons that are a little bit harder to classify when it comes to that. But these guys are really cool. So they're called eyelash boas, and they don't all have the distinctive eyelash formation as some of the species do, but they have, kind of like the crested geckos, they have that cool like little ridge over their eyes that gives them their distinctive name. These guys are found in the New World, so Central South America, mostly on islands in like the Caribbean down into South America, mostly island locality type snakes. These guys are really cool for a number of reasons. Number one is they have like 800 names. They're different tree snakes, they're ground snakes, they're bow snakes, they're water snakes, they're eyelash boas, they're tracky boas, they're dwarf boas. All of them describe basically the same snakes, just kind of depending on who it is that you're talking to. And are you going for the clock? Of course you are. Another thing is that they have a bunch of really weird adaptations that people normally don't associate with snakes. The first of which is that they have this adaptation made very famous by the horned lizard, which is auto-hemorrhaging. So, as a defense mechanism, the horned lizard will actually shoot blood, its actual blood, from their eyes as a defense mechanism to deter predators. These guys do something very similar. They don't actually physically shoot them out and project it, but they will auto-hemorrhage from the nose, from the mouth, from their cloaca, and from their eyes. Their eyes will kind of it'll enlarge a little bit because there's that skin and scale, the scale that covers their eyes. That will actually enlarge and turn red because blood will build up there, and it will actually kind of start to seep out, and it's supposed to be a deterrent. I don't exactly know how effective that is, but it would probably freak me out if I just saw a snake start to do that on my own. They're not widely captive bred or kept as far as I'm aware, at least in the United States, but I think it'd be really cool to get a hold of either a long-term captive or I don't think anyone's breeding them. It'd be really cool to get some of those into the hobby. One more last little really cool thing about these guys. They change color. So we all think about the chameleons changing color, and there's the myth about their moods or whatever, but it's really more of a temperature thing and a territorial hormonal thing. It's not just the myth of they blend in with their background, not with their mood. The mood's a little bit closer. Sorry about that. That was bad. But these guys, not the Dumeril's boa lily, but the tracky eyelash boas, can change color. And the way they do that is with these really cool light-absorbing pigment cells that will effectively change their entire skin pigmentation from a light silvery white at night to kind of a tannish dark gray brown during the day. And they think that the reason for that is that lighter colored objects absorb heat and light a little bit slower than darker objects. So, you don't wear black in the sun because you get really hot, that kind of a thing. Well, at night, if it's a lighter white colored object, once it's absorbed that heat, it takes longer for that heat to escape. So they think that the reason why at night they're the lighter color, it's to that way be able to hold on to that internal temperature longer because they're exothermic. They have to take in heat from their surroundings. They are not like mammals and birds that just do it on their own. And so that's why they possibly think they do that. So really cool species of snake. So to kind of round this up, we're going to finish with another kind of grouping of snakes, and that is another type of boid species, and that is Candoya. So Candoya is a genus of species, another kind of dwarf boas, which again they're not closer related to like the tracky boas, but they're another dwarf species that aren't very closely resembled to like the traditional, tree boas or imperators. These guys are like the viper boas, the Solomon Island ground and tree boas, those type of snakes. They're really cool. They have a bunch of really cool adaptations. Number one is their basic biology and physiology of how they actually look, I think is another one of those where it's very similar to mimicry, where they look very close to adders or a venomous snake that a lot of predators will leave alone based on what they look like because they know that those are animals that could effectively harm them or, kill them because of their venomous bite. Similar to coral snakes being the venomous elapid, whereas milk snakes and some king snakes will have mimicry for those as well. So it's a really cool little thing. They're a fun little snake. They're brought in fairly regularly through imports, which I'm not super happy about, but a lot of people are starting to breed them more captively now, which is really, really cool. They have an amazing amazing pattern. There's several different colors of all the different species, and it's all really great for camouflage, for blending in with the leaf color, and the vegetation on the ground, like these guys. With the exception of the, like the Solomon Island and those type of island locality tree boas, they're all pretty much on the ground sedentary animals. And even then, the tree boas will kind of, similar to the Malagasy tree boas, will be in the trees during the day and at night come down on the ground to actually feed. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I didn't stutter too much. I know I fumbled a little bit. I'm a little out of practice doing videos. It's been a heck of a year so far. So getting back into the swing of it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there are any of these snakes that you didn't in fact know existed before now. Doom boas doesn't count, but let me know if there are any that you didn't hear about, or if there are any other type of snakes that you would want to see similar to like the pythons or this video. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Hit us up. Facebook, Instagram, email me at jzreptiles@gmail.com for any questions, comments. She's going for the clock. And I hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.